The night was inky black, and the wind howled through the desolate stretch of road that led to my parents' home. I was on a journey to surprise them, having not seen them for months. The anticipation of the visit filled me with excitement, but as the miles rolled by, unease began to creep in. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. My car's engine hummed steadily, and the radio played soft, soothing music. The moon was hidden behind thick clouds, casting eerie shadows along the road. A sense of isolation began to settle in, as there were no other vehicles in sight for miles. The only company I had was the rhythmic patter of rain on the windshield. As I drove deeper into the night, the rain grew heavier, and my visibility deteriorated. My heart sank when I noticed a faint, orange glow on the dashboard. My gas gauge was perilously close to empty. Panic surged through me, but there was no choice but to continue, as there were no gas stations in sight. The storm intensified and lightning cracked across the sky, briefly illuminating the desolation that surrounded me. Just when it seemed like the world couldn't get any darker, my headlights flickered and died. I cursed under my breath, coasting to a stop on the side of the road. I checked my phone. There was no signal. Desperation welled up inside me as I realized I was stranded in the middle of nowhere, in the dead of night, with no one to turn to. My only option was to get out of the car and investigate the engine trouble. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped into the pouring rain. I popped the hood and tried to make sense of the engine, but my knowledge was limited. Raindrops pelted my face as I fumbled with the machinery, but I couldn't discern what had gone wrong. My frustration grew with each futile attempt to restart the engine. As I was about to give up, I heard a faint sound from the nearby woods. It was a whisper, a distant voice carried by the wind. I strained to listen, but the words remained elusive, as if the night itself was conspiring to keep me in the dark. "Hello? Is anyone there?" I called out, my voice quivering. There was no response, just the relentless rain and the rustling of leaves. With a heavy heart, I returned to the car and locked the doors, feeling vulnerable in the oppressive darkness. The woods, with their lurking secrets, seemed to press in around me. I tried to call for help again, but my phone remained devoid of signal. My parents' house was hours away, and I had no choice but to stay in the car until morning. I curled up in the back seat, shivering from both the cold and fear, my flashlight a meager source of comfort. Time stretched on, and my fear grew more palpable with each passing minute. The whispering wind outside the car took on an eerie, unearthly quality, and I could have sworn I heard my name being spoken in hushed tones. Then, as I was drifting into an uneasy sleep, I heard a loud, scraping sound on the car roof. My heart leaped into my throat and I froze, my breath catching in my chest. The scraping continued, growing louder and more frenzied. With trembling hands, I turned on my flashlight and directed it towards the car roof. What I saw made my blood run cold. Fingers, pale and gnarled, reached down from the roof, their grotesque nails scraping against the metal. My mind struggled to comprehend the horror before me as the fingers sought entrance through the window. I screamed, fumbling for the car keys, and started the engine. The fingers retracted and the car roared to life. Without looking back, I sped away, my heart pounding in my ears. As the night gave way to the first light of dawn, I finally reached my parents' home, my body trembling with a mixture of relief and terror. I burst through the door, my parents staring at me in shock. "What happened? You look like you've seen a ghost," my mother exclaimed. I recounted the night's horrors, the car breakdown, the whispering wind, and the grotesque fingers that had reached for me. My parents listened in disbelief, but the look in their eyes told me that they had their own suspicions about the road I had traveled. My father, a man of few words, finally spoke. "You're not the first to experience something strange on that road. It's a place where the border between our world and another grows thin. There are things out there that defy explanation." I never ventured down that road again. My parents insisted I stay with them until I had calmed my nerves. The journey I had embarked on with such enthusiasm had become a nightmare, a night I would never forget. In the end, the road that led to my parents' home held more than just family. It held secrets and terrors that I could barely comprehend. It was supposed to be a romantic night out with my girlfriend, Emily. We had been planning this date for weeks, and I was determined to make it perfect. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a silvery glow over the winding road as we headed toward a secluded, picturesque spot far from the city lights. As we drove deeper into the night, Emily and I laughed, holding hands while our favorite love songs played softly on the radio. The world felt right, and the stars seemed to twinkle with approval. But the tranquility of the night was shattered by a sudden, ominous thud. The car jolted, and we both gasped, our hearts racing as we struggled to regain control. "What was that?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. I pulled the car over to the side of the road, my mind racing. I turned off the engine and stepped out into the chilly night air, shining my flashlight under the car to see what had happened. There, beneath the dim light, I saw the shredded remains of a tire, the rubber torn to ribbons. "Calm down, Em," I said, trying to sound reassuring. "We've had a flat tire. I'll change it and we'll be on our way." I began to rummage through the trunk, searching for the spare tire and the jack. Emily watched nervously from the car, her breath visible in the frosty air. As I worked to replace the flat tire, the woods surrounding us seemed to close in, the darkness growing deeper and more unsettling by the minute. As I struggled with the lug nuts, the forest suddenly fell silent, and an eerie chill crept down my spine. I felt as though we were being watched, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking in the shadows just beyond the reach of the flashlight. I dismissed it as paranoia, but my unease only intensified when Emily let out a piercing scream. I dropped the lug wrench and rushed to the car. She was pointing out the windshield, her finger trembling as she stared into the darkness. "There, by the trees, I saw something," she exclaimed, her voice quivering with fear. I shone the flashlight in the direction she was pointing, but there was nothing there, just the impenetrable blackness of the forest. "It's probably just an animal," I said, my own voice unsteady. But as I returned to the task of changing the tire, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The forest seemed to come alive with strange noises, rustling leaves, snapping twigs, and faint, ghostly whispers that made my skin crawl. Just as I was about to tighten the last lug nut, a bone-chilling howl pierced the night. It was unlike any animal sound I had ever heard, a mix of agony and fury that sent a shiver down my spine. Emily clutched my arm, her eyes wide with terror. "We need to get out of here," she pleaded. I didn't need any more convincing. I abandoned the spare tire and jumped back into the car, my heart pounding as I revved the engine. With the shredded tire and the jack left behind, we sped away, leaving the nightmarish forest behind us. As the car hurtled down the dark road, I couldn't help but glance in the rear-view mirror, half expecting to see something pursuing us, something not quite human. We finally reached a gas station on the outskirts of town, the attendant looking at us with a mix of pity and disbelief as we recounted our harrowing experience. Emily and I both knew that the story sounded crazy, but the fear in our eyes was undeniable. The mechanic who fixed our car confirmed that the tire had been shredded in an inexplicable manner. He couldn't explain it, and we didn't press for answers. All we wanted was to put the night behind us. Days turned into weeks, and we tried to put the strange encounter out of our minds, but it lingered like a shadow, a chilling reminder of the inexplicable terrors that could lurk in the darkness. The howl still haunted my dreams, and the feeling of being watched never truly left me. I couldn't help but wonder about the woods, the darkness, and the creature that had been hidden there. What had we stumbled upon that night? And had we narrowly escaped something unspeakable? No matter how much we tried to forget, that night would forever be etched in our memories. A date gone horribly wrong, a night of terror on a desolate road. We learned the hard way that sometimes the most frightening things are the ones that can't be explained, the ones that remain hidden in the shadows, just out of sight but never truly gone. It was a moonless night, and the dense canopy of ancient trees cast eerie shadows over the winding, desolate road. I had been driving for hours, attempting to outrun the storm that had been following me since dusk. The wind howled like a hungry beast, and the rain fell in relentless sheets, as if the heavens themselves were trying to drown me. My knuckles were white as I gripped the steering wheel, my heart racing faster than the wipers could clear the windshield. I was in the middle of nowhere, on a road that seemed to go on forever with no signs of civilization in sight. My gas tank was perilously close to empty, and I had no choice but to press on. The radio offered nothing but static, and the only company I had was the sound of the rain and the occasional crack of thunder. It was the kind of night that made your imagination play tricks on you, filling your mind with irrational fears. As I rounded a particularly sharp curve, the engine sputtered and died. Panic welled up inside me as I desperately tried to restart the car. But it was no use. The engine remained silent, and the dashboard lights flickered weakly before fading to darkness. I was alone, stranded in the heart of the forest, with only the storm for company. With a heavy sigh, I decided to abandon the car and seek shelter until morning. The rain was unrelenting, and I had no desire to sit in a dark, cold car all night. I grabbed my flashlight and ventured out into the tempest, the beam of light cutting through the inky blackness like a lifeline. The rain-soaked ground squished beneath my shoes as I stumbled through the forest, searching for any sign of a dwelling. My steps were uneven, my heart pounding, and the shadows seemed to move and dance in the eerie glow of the flashlight. The forest was alive with a symphony of unsettling sounds, the whispering of leaves, the distant howling of an unseen creature, and the occasional snap of a branch that sent shivers down my spine. After what felt like an eternity, I saw a glimmer of light through the trees. It was a small, dilapidated cabin, nestled deep within the forest. Relief washed over me as I approached, though the place looked abandoned and forlorn. The windows were shattered, and the door hung from one rusty hinge. Nevertheless, it was shelter from the storm, and I couldn't afford to be picky. I cautiously pushed open the creaking door and stepped into the cabin. The air inside was thick with the musty smell of decay, and the dim light from my flashlight barely illuminated the barren room. The place was in shambles with broken furniture and peeling wallpaper. In the corner, I spotted a tattered, moldy couch, which I decided would be my makeshift bed for the night. As I settled onto the couch, my eyes were drawn to a weathered photo on the wall. It depicted a family, their faces obscured by age and neglect. The children in the photo wore tattered clothes, and the parents had a weary, haunted look in their eyes. Something about the photo sent a shiver down my spine, and I quickly averted my gaze. Outside, the storm raged on, the wind howling like a pack of hungry wolves. The rain battered the roof, creating a deafening symphony of its own. I wrapped myself in my jacket and tried to get some rest, but sleep eluded me. The rustling of leaves and the distant, mournful hooting of an owl filled the cabin with an oppressive sense of dread. As I lay there, I heard a faint, ghostly whisper in the distance. It sounded like a child's voice calling out for help. My heart raced as I strained to hear more, but the words were unintelligible. Goosebumps prickled my skin, and my breath quickened. I crept to the broken window, my flashlight trembling in my hand. The forest outside was a sea of shadows, and the rain distorted my view. I strained my ears, but the voice had vanished, swallowed by the storm. Just as I was about to retreat from the window, I saw movement in the forest, something that shouldn't have been there. A pale figure, like a child, stood among the trees. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and a smile stretched across its gaunt face. It beckoned me with bony fingers, and I could hear the whispering voice once more, louder and clearer. "Come play with us forever." I stumbled back from the window, my heart pounding, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The cabin had become a tomb, and the forest outside was a realm of unspeakable horror. I huddled on the couch, my flashlight clutched tightly, praying for the first light of dawn to rescue me from this nightmare. But as the hours passed, the storm only grew more ferocious, and the sinister presence outside the cabin seemed to draw closer. The whispers in the night became an unrelenting cacophony, and I knew that I was not alone in the cabin. The shadows danced around me, and I could feel their icy fingers on my skin.